You can call me Alex. I don't believe in fate. I can't. Fate implies that everything happens for a reason, and if that's true, if all the chaos and destruction, all the random, awful things in this world are meant to be, then what kind of sense does that make? No, I believe in randomness. Probability, possibility, chance, numbers. Randomness keeps the world moving forward without a cruel puppeteer pulling the strings. It's easier to think like that. Easier to believe that we're just here, floating in some cosmic algorithm without a formula. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Baltimore. It's small, but it's mine. My life? Well, I don't have one, really. I work, I go home, and I try not to think too much. That's it. My world is quiet, predictable, almost mechanical. There's a kind of comfort in it, but it's not what anyone would call living. There is one thing, though. One thing that breaks the monotony every couple of weeks. Every 2 weeks, I meet someone. He calls himself Cody, but I know that's a lie. I don't know his real name. I don't know where he comes from, what his life is like, or what he's hiding. And that's fine, because he doesn't know me either. Not really. Cody doesn't know why I needed to see him tonight. Why I craved his presence like oxygen. He might have sensed it in the way I held him longer than usual, or the way my breathing hitched when we kissed, but he didn't know. He couldn't have known how lost I was, how untethered. He left, of course. Said he was late for work. And I just stood there in the fading warmth of his absence, wishing he could have stayed, knowing it was better that he didn't. The silence didn't last long. My phone buzzed again and again until I finally caved and looked at it. Missed calls from Roshni, my co-worker, and texts I didn't want to read. Then a knock on my door made me jump. It was David, my boss. He never comes by. David stood there with his hands in his pockets, his usual calm but serious expression plastered on his face. "I wanted to check on you," he said. "You've been off." I wanted to laugh to tell him I was fine, but my throat tightened. "Take a few days," he added. "We don't have much going on, so you'll have time to reset." I told myself he didn't actually care. He just wanted to make sure his cash cow, as he once jokingly called me, wasn't burning out. That's all this was. At least that's what I kept telling myself until the texts from Roshni came through again, the screen lighting up with her concern. I couldn't take it anymore. That night, I decided to drink. The nearest gay club wasn't far, and the cold air barely touched me as I stormed down the street. When I arrived, music pounded against my chest, neon lights reflected off the walls, and I was hit by the smell of alcohol and sweat. I didn't look at the men dancing, didn't glance at the go-go boys on the platform, or even acknowledge the crowd. I went straight for the back bar and ordered a vodka shot, then another, and another. Somewhere in the haze of it all, I realized my phone hadn't stopped buzzing. My instincts screamed at me to throw it away, but I couldn't. I wasn't allowed to be reckless. I wasn't allowed to let go. But that night felt different. And it was. I didn't look at them, or anyone else. The crowd, the music, the flashing lights. It was all a blur. I went straight for the back bar and ordered shot after shot of vodka, the burn numbing something inside me. Men came and went through a side door that led down to the basement. I ignored them, ignored everything, losing count of how many drinks I'd had. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, notifications piling up. Messages, calls, relentless reminders of a world I didn't want to deal with. I should have turned it off. What I wanted to do was throw it away, but I wasn't allowed to be that person. What if something happened? What if I was needed? The thought of being needed scared me almost as much as the idea that maybe I wasn't. "Hey, kid." I froze, the voice cutting through the haze, deep, with a thick Ukrainian accent that pulled at something buried in my chest. For a second, I thought it was my father, impossibly. But it wasn't. It was Adrian. He was sitting next to me like he belonged there, like he hadn't been absent from my life for what felt like forever. his broad frame slouched casually against the bar, and below the TVs flashing explicit images just 15 feet from the back door, there he was. When he saw my shock, he laughed. "Relax, kid. Being raised by mama has had you scared of everything." "I'm not scared," I shot back, though my words slurred. "Sure you're not," he said, smirking. "Drink with me," I demanded, already waving the bartender over. I ordered 2 more shots of vodka, and the bartender hesitated before serving them, his expression wary. I downed one immediately and slid the other toward Adrian. He didn't touch it, just watched as I swayed slightly on the stool. I took his shot, too. He leaned closer, his voice lower but still carrying that rough edge. "If there was anything I could do for you, what would it be?" The question shouldn't have caught me off guard, but it did. My phone buzzed again, vibrating against the counter as if to underscore the moment. Messages kept coming, insistently pulling at me like a tether I couldn't cut. I swallowed hard, my vision blurring slightly as I thought about his question. And then I said it. Half because I wished he could do it, and half because I knew he couldn't. "Make me invisible." For a long moment, he just looked at me, his dark eyes searching mine. I stared back, daring him to say something. "I can't stay long, kid," he finally said, his tone softer now. "I just wanted to tell you to take care." He gestured at me, the bar, the empty glasses. "This isn't healthy." Before I could respond, he stood and walked away. I blinked, trying to process his words, trying to understand why he'd come only to leave so soon. It wasn't until one of the go-go boys started walking straight toward me that I realized I was still sitting there, unsteady and exposed. It took me too long to recognize him, to register the sharp jawline, the determined stride. It was Cody, dressed like the others, all sharp edges and irritation. He stopped in front of me, his eyes blazing. "What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My thoughts were too slow, too muddled to form a coherent response. "You followed me to my job?" he hissed, leaning closer, his voice low but furious. "I didn't mean to." The words were weak, and I hated how pathetic they sounded. I hadn't even known he worked here. Not really. But it didn't matter. Cody shook his head, disgust flashing across his face. "You crossed a line, Alex." And just like that, he was gone, back into the crowd, leaving me to stumble out into the dark, cold streets of Baltimore. The wind cut through me as I walked quickly, too quickly, toward my apartment. My chest felt tight, the alcohol swirling in my stomach, threatening to rise. When I finally got inside, the heat hit me like a wall. I barely made it to the bathroom before I got sick. After brushing my teeth, I collapsed onto my bed, the world spinning around me. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the night in my head, Cody's anger burning in my mind. Invisible. That's what I'd asked for. And for the first time, it felt like I might already be halfway there. The next morning, I woke up with a headache pounding like a construction site in my skull. Even before I opened my eyes, I was already calculating the number of brain cells I'd killed the night before. Too many, probably. Dragging myself out of bed, I went straight for coffee. The warmth of the mug in my hands was a small comfort as I sat in the corner of the cafe, ignoring my phone's relentless buzzing. I let the steam rise into my face, breathing in the vapors like they could cleanse the mess I'd made of the last 24 hours. That's when I saw Roshni walk in. At first, she didn't see me. I considered ducking under the table or slipping out the side door, but both options felt childish and ridiculous. Besides, the only way out would take me right past her. So, I stayed put, doing my best to blend into the background, pretending I wasn't looking in her direction. My pulse quickened as her eyes swept across the cafe. Then, she looked right at me. I smiled reflexively, the kind of polite, awkward smile you give when you've been caught. But her face remained blank. No acknowledgement, no warmth. I nodded and gave a small wave, but still nothing. She turned to the counter and placed her order as if I didn't exist. Confused and a little unsettled, I decided to approach her. Maybe she was upset with me for something, though I couldn't imagine what. I got up slowly and walked over, hesitating behind her. "Roshni," I said, my voice low, cautious. She didn't turn around. "Roshni," I repeated, louder this time. Nothing. It wasn't that she was ignoring me. She didn't hear me. She couldn't see me. The realization hit me like ice water. My stomach dropped as I stared at her, watching her take her coffee and walk away, completely unaware of my presence. Was it true? Was I invisible? The absurdity of it twisted my thoughts in every direction. How did it work? Why now? And what would I do with it? The possibilities came rushing in, faster than I could stop them. Men's locker room, bank vault, celebrity sauna. Apparently, I had a darker side to my imagination than I'd realized. I spent the day testing it out, wandering through the streets and seeing who noticed me and who didn't. It wasn't consistent. Some people seemed to glance at me, others walked right past as though I wasn't there. I stepped into a convenience store, grabbed a candy bar, and walked out without paying, the clerk not even blinking. It was real. I wasn't crazy. By the time the sun began to set, my mind was spinning with questions. What were the limits? How long would it last? And most importantly, why me? Despite everything, I knew where I needed to go. That night, I found myself standing outside the club where Cody worked. My breath misted in the cold air as I stared at the neon sign flickering above the entrance. Whatever happened to me, it started last night. With Adrian. With Cody. If I wanted answers, this was the only place to start. I could have easily chameleoned myself, walked inside, and watched everything Cody did in his element, saw him from the shadows. But something stopped me before I could touch the door handle. I stepped back, taking in the neon lights, the muffled sounds of music spilling from the club. It felt like a trap. So, I waited. Hours passed, the city's pulse quickening as the night wore on. The club began to empty out, the music dying down. Cody appeared with a few other dancers and a bouncer in tow. Their casual chatter was cut short when they noticed something off. Their guard went up, alert, defensive. That was when Cody, ever the leader, waved them off with a dismissive gesture, sending them on their way. I didn't approach right away. I couldn't. Instead, I stood there, too self-conscious to call out to him, even though I wanted to. But when he started walking away alone, I had to. "Hey, Cody," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I didn't know you worked here. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." He stiffened at the mention of the club, his face darkening. "I didn't judge you," I added quickly, wanting to assure him. The words hung in the air for a moment before the tension between us snapped. "You don't know anything about me," he muttered. "Don't pretend like you do." His voice carried the bite of frustration, but it didn't hide the hurt underneath. It stung, but I couldn't leave it there. "I didn't mean to," but he was already walking away, cutting me off with every step. I stood there for a moment, fuming and helpless. Then I did something I'd sworn I wouldn't. Something reckless. I went invisible. At first, I just walked beside him, standing a few steps back, watching him navigate through the darkened streets. It was like I was seeing a whole new side of Cody. I had no idea his life was like this. He walked to the far west side of the city, his footsteps echoing against the pavement as I followed, unnoticed. He took 2 buses just to get to work during the day, and at night, he had to either take 3 or risk walking through a dangerous neighborhood, and it wasn't like his apartment was better. When he finally reached the small, beaten-up house turned into apartments, Something in me twisted. I stood there, watching as he walked inside, the door clicking shut behind him. It was the kind of place I never would have imagined him living in, and suddenly I felt small. Ashamed. Ashamed for following him, ashamed for spying on him. I didn't know what kind of person I was becoming. I pulled my phone out and ordered a ride back home. No more following, no more pretending I could understand what it was like for him. The next day, I received a message from him. "I'm sorry about how defensive I was last night," he wrote. "I didn't mean to snap at you, but you should stay away from me. It's better for you." A sinking feeling settled in my chest. He was right, of course, but I couldn't let go of what I'd learned, of what I felt. Without thinking, I messaged him back. "I don't want to stay away from you," I typed, my fingers trembling. "I know it's stupid, but I like you. I don't want this to end." The message sat there, unanswered. Hours passed, then a day, then two. Cody didn't reply. He'd stopped responding altogether. I could have walked away. I should have walked away. But instead, after weighing the factors, running the calculations in my mind, my high IQ, my superior critical thinking skills at work, what I did next made complete sense. I was going to fix this. I was going to get an answer. I didn't know how or why, but I wasn't going to sit back and let this slip away without at least one more try. The dark November cold hit me like a wall as I ran through the streets, my breath sharp and shallow in the freezing air. People collided with me, their shoulders brushing mine, muttered apologies, trailing behind them. At first I thought they were just being careless, but then I realized the truth. They couldn't see me. I was invisible again, without even trying. The realization unsettled me, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. I had one goal: get to the club, find Cody, and make him see me. I slipped through the crowd at the entrance unnoticed, weaving through the flashing lights and pulsing music. The heat of bodies pressing together filled the air, a stark contrast to the cold outside. My eyes searched the room, and there he was, Cody, moving fluidly on his platform, the red and blue stage lights casting an otherworldly glow across his bare chest and shimmering shorts. He was a vision, but he didn't see me. I waited, hovering at the edge of the dance floor, my desperation mounting. When he finally stepped down from the platform and headed toward the back hallway, I followed him. The hallway was dim and narrow, the music muffled but still pounding in my ears. I wasn't trying to intrude, I wasn't even thinking. I just wanted him to notice me, to see me, to hear me. I couldn't lose him. He entered the bathroom and I slipped in behind him, my steps silent. Another dancer stood at the sink, reapplying makeup in the mirror. They didn't notice me, of course. "Micah," Cody said, his voice low and uneven, his reflection meeting Micah's concerned eyes in the mirror. Micah turned, immediately setting down their brush. "Girl, I know people who do every single day what you're about to do for the first time. Some of them flourish at it. Some of them don't care one way or another, but you're not one of those people. You're going to regret going down this road. It will never end." Cody splashed water on his face, his shoulders tense. He stared at his reflection like it wasn't even his own. "I don't have a choice," he said quietly. I saw it then, the resignation in his eyes, the pending death, not of his body, but of his spirit. He turned and left the bathroom, the door swinging shut behind him. I stood there, frozen. The weight of what I'd heard pressed down on me, and I thought I'd reached the breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore. And then, just like that, he was there. "Make it stop, Adrian," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Please, make it stop." Adrian, my brother, stood beside me, whole, solid, and calm. I didn't know how or why he was there, but he was. His presence steadied me, filling the aching void inside me. Micah turned, their eyes widening in confusion. At first, They probably wondered where I'd come from, materializing out of nowhere. But then I broke down, clutching Adrian like I never wanted to let go. "I love you," I said, the words spilling out, raw and unfiltered. Micah stared at me, their expression shifting from confusion to something softer, almost pitying. They didn't understand who I was talking to, couldn't see him, couldn't feel him. But I could. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was whole again. And it didn't matter who could see it or who couldn't. The club's thumping music felt like a distant echo as I caught up to him. Grabbing his hand, I stopped him mid-step. "Please," I said, my voice trembling. "Please talk to me." His eyes widened as he turned, catching the tear-filled desperation in mine. For a moment, I thought he might shake me off, but instead, he gestured to a nearby bouncer to back off. Then he nodded, squeezed my hand, and led me to the back room. We sat across from each other, the dim light casting long shadows on the walls. The silence between us was heavy, but I knew it was my turn to speak. "When I was 3, I began, my voice faltering. My parents divorced. My mom brought me to the US, but my dad and brother stayed in Ukraine. My father, he was killed in the first invasion." I paused, swallowing hard. "My mom, even after all those years, was still in love with him. She died of a heart attack a week later. And then, 3 days ago, I got the call. My brother Adrian was killed in combat." I looked down, my hands trembling as I clenched them together. We weren't close, but he was all I had left. And now, I'm terrified of being alone, completely alone. The words hung in the air between us. I wasn't sure if he'd say anything, but when he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "My real name is Charles," he said, his gaze steady. "But you can call me Charlie. I know this sounds dumb because though I know you, I barely know you. But if I could take care of you, I would." He didn't understand my actual situation, but the sentiment was sweet. Well taken. For the first time, he seemed to let his guard down, leaning back as if the weight of his own burdens was too much to carry. "My mom had a stroke 2 years ago. She's in a nursing home now. And my little brother, he's only 17, was diagnosed with retinal degeneration. He's almost completely blind." His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed through. "I'm doing everything I can to keep us afloat, to get him the procedure he needs to see again." I was supposed to meet with the head surgeon this morning to talk about funding options, but he canceled at the last minute. Took the whole week off. Probably a last-minute golfing trip. He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "It feels like every time I get close to fixing things, the ground shifts under me." "Do you believe in fate?" I asked him. He frowned, caught off guard by the question. "No," he said after a moment. "Not really." I nodded. "Neither do I. I can't believe everything is already written, that everything happens for a reason. But I do believe in moments where we can make a difference." His eyes softened as he listened. "I haven't been completely clear with you," I said, straightening my posture. "I haven't told you entirely who I really am." Charlie tilted his head, confused. I took a deep breath and began. "I was a child prodigy. I graduated from high school at 13. Got my first doctoral degree by 18. I leaned forward, holding his gaze. "I'm 22 years old now, and my name is Dr. Alexander Melnick. I'm the head of visual prosthesis at Johns Hopkins University Hospital and the world's leading bionic eye implant surgeon. But you can call me Alex. I'm the one you were supposed to meet this morning. Your little brother is named Joshua." "Josh," Charlie corrected me, his confusion turning to shock. "Well, don't worry about anything. I will make sure you don't pay for more than lunch from the cafeteria." The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was electric, filled with possibilities. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel invisible. We had a lot of time to truly get to know each other. I ended up meeting with him and his brother on more than one occasion, and myself and my team created a routine procedure which ultimately over time was a success. We still had many walls to tear down, but what stood in their place was sturdy, something which could be relied on.